2023 started off with a bang, with The Last of Us completely blowing my mind with its second episode. But there are a lot of little things you might have missed. So here's a look at some of the biggest Easter eggs and details in the latest episode. I can't start this off without talking about the clicker Easter egg. I mean, it's not every day that one of the most feared enemies from your favorite game just pops into a show and still feels just as terrifying. Of course, Ellie first hinted at them while the three were walking on a highway to the hotel. But that's not what I'm going to be talking about. The real Easter egg takes place after the trio enters the museum. Suddenly, the same noises from the game all around you tell you that the clickers are nearby. They simultaneously used almost the same sound effect on the doors to show that they're old and creaky, and also build hype for the fans out there. But that wasn't the only monster their talk on the highway hinted towards, and they perfectly set up bloaters. Joel and Tess aren't even aware that such a thing exists now. The bloaters are essentially people who have been infected by the cordyceps fungi for such a long time that they're almost entirely covered by plates of fungi and have bloated up, making them one of the hardest things to kill out there. But it doesn't just stop there. What makes them even scarier is that they can shoot out balls full of exploding fungi. The characters are up for a big surprise. I mean, if we're talking about hints Ellie gave on that highway, I can't ignore how The Last of Us dropped a hint about Riley. But who even is Riley? She was mentioned in the first episode as well. Anyone who's played the Left Behind DLC from the first game knows that Riley was Ellie's best friend and the same person who went into the mall with her. And that is why Ellie was even able to survive that horrifying situation. The show goes into more depth about the two characters and their relationship later on, or those are the speculations the trailer gives you. Riley is going to be played by none other than Storm Reed. Of course, a hint at Riley is also a direct hint at Ellie's sexuality. While you're looking into Ellie's past, Tess asks her if she's got a boyfriend who might come after them in search of her, to which the character just said no. It might not seem like much at first, but it's a huge hint into Ellie's sexuality, who's lesbian. When the show later on explores her backstory with Riley, you could get a deeper look into her sexuality, since the two did have a spark in the DLC. Not just that, but Ramsey's performance clearly showed that the character was trying to avoid that conversation. But that isn't the only time Tess has teased fans about the plot. She might have popped hints about the ending. The last words you hear her say to Joel is that she needs to save who she can. Obviously, this is a clear foreshadowing of what will happen later in the show. Another way that the adaptation sets up Joel's controversial decision at the end. For anyone that doesn't know, Joel ends up saving Ellie instead of handing her over for the cure, and risks all of humanity just to save someone he thinks of as a daughter. That's far from the only thing the show hinted at. Tess finally confirmed a theory. Ever since the first game came out, hundreds of theories have been suggested that there might have been something romantic going on between Joel and Tess. Well, the show finally answered that question. The two were together. But it's not as nice as it seems. The entire thing was pretty one-sided, and Joel didn't feel the same way as Tess. Why won't Joe feel the same way, though? It could have had something to do with his traumatic past that he isn't willing to move on from yet. But there were more secrets to the episode than just foreshadowing. In fact, there were a lot of references to the game, such as a shot-for-shot recreation of the rooftop scene. It all starts when the trio climbs out of the museum's window and onto the ledge, creating a shot-for-shot recreation of the original game, even down to its dialogue. That's not all. Even the view you see from the top of the building is the same as the game. The scene even manages to set up one of the most important parts of the game that the show needs to fit in if it wants to do fans justice. Another scene that directly references the game is the hotel scene. You might remember Ellie playing around at the hotel's entrance as she pretended to be a bellhop and tried to check in. That very scene is also a complete recreation of the original scene. Even though though the dialogue is the same as the game, as Ellie tries to act as a posh member of society, and Joel tells her she's weird. That's still far from the only reference to the hotel scenes. One of them is poking fun at Ellie's character in the game. As the trio walks into the hotel, Ellie lets Joel know she can't swim. In the game, there are these super annoying sections where you have to find a slab of wood to move Ellie around in areas submerged in water. The show basically made fun of that as Joel jumped into it, and it turns out the water was knee-high. It was a hilarious moment for viewers who haven't played the game either, though it's bound to put in that reference later on. Another thing that the show is bound to be is its ending, which Joel and Tess perfectly foreshadowed. This one occurs at the start of the episode when the two confront Ellie about her so-called immunity. When the two find out that the Fireflies have hopes that Ellie could lead them to finally figure out a cure, Joel simply says that it isn't possible, and that they've heard of things like that before too, that lead to nothing. The scene perfectly sets up the ending.
They're working on a cure.
I've heard this before.
And whatever happened to me is
It's the key to finding the vaccine. That's what this is. We've heard this a million times. Vaccines, miracle cures. None of it works.
And I didn't ask for this.
You and me both. This isn't gonna end well, Tess. We need to go back.
Since Joel risks all of humanity, decides to save Ellie, and finishes all hope of a cure. Though that wasn't the only thing that hints at the ending. Ibu Ratna also pointed towards it. Who would have thought that they would go on to foreshadow how the show is probably going to end right at the start of the second episode?
Jadi apa yang harus kami lakukan?
Bom, mulailah pengoboman.
It ties in perfectly with Joel's decision at the end, as Ratna goes on to talk about how cures aren't possible for such a disease, and that the best option they have is to destroy all infected. This could in turn make some sense out of the decision that Joel made at the end of the first game that wasn't really discussed, and there were no large repercussions to that. The show is going to be talking about that entire debacle after, of course, Joel's done killing every single Firefly in that area. But Ibu Ratna is all the way out in Indonesia. How is Jakarta even connected to this? In the show's first episode, you can hear talks of a disease spreading rapidly in Jakarta. That's where it all started. But in the second episode, right at the start, you get a deeper look into it with Ibu Ratna, who finds out that 14 infected workers are unaccounted for and are spreading the fungus around even more. They had already failed to contain it even before it properly started. Ratna then tells them that they need to bomb everyone to contain it. Those are all the hidden secrets and Easter eggs from episode 2 of The Last of Us. See you in the next video.